I'm doing good. How are you?
Well, being the fact that I ran to my boyfriend's house to jump on the Peloton and I
Oh.
forgot my hair tie. So I was like, oh my God. So I lost so much time. I was looking for a hair tie. He didn't have a rubber band. So do you have Pampered Chef up there?
Yes, we do.
You ever see the Twix-It clips that you clip the bag shut
Yep.
with?
Yep.
Totally pulled my hair up with a Twix-It clip. And I'm like, running home. I'm like, I got my webinar.
Whatever works sometimes is what you got to go with.
Yep. I could have been a commercial for Pampered Chef.
There you go. It's got multiple uses, including
a hair tie.
That's so funny. So funny. So
What do
people
you
are
have for us
probably.
today? I see we have a guest.
I'm not sure how she's a guest. Just give me a second. She somehow, and I think it might have been the fact that we're just going to change her role back to attendee. There we go. Just in case, because anyone that does come on with video, we have to have things completed for our legal team to ensure that they're okay with being on camera. So,
yeah. I'm okay. I'm making that camera.
Pardon?
I'm in the spotlight.
There you go. Yeah, we're all, and I imagine there's so really what we come across and with our training day to day is a lot of people just don't know what to say, right? So they get stuck with not picking up the phone because they don't know what to say, or when they get those objections thrown at them, they don't know how to handle them, and they get uncomfortable in a lot of cases. And what we do when we get uncomfortable is the fastest thing we can do to get off the phone. So it's a good opportunity to kind of go over, how we open up with a lead. How do we steer that conversation to get the information that we need from that lead? And then from there, handling the objections that are going to come across. So obviously we do have, the I'm just looking objection, which definitely has several different layers, and how to pull those layers off to get the information you need, or handling the I have a realtor. And then, of course, if anyone here, there is the option to raise your hand. If you have a question, we can enable you to talk, do some role playing. And then, of course, in the comments question section, you can definitely, if there's an objection that you've heard several times that you don't know how to handle or the best approach to handle, just put it in there and we'll go after it and find out a solution for you.
Well, I guess while we're waiting on those to post the most common objections that they're receiving, that they're struggling with, I just want to start off with saying, taking all of that out of the equation and saying, okay, number one, why did you become a realtor in the first place? Because at the root of all of the results that we're looking to achieve, it all starts with our own personal why. We have to take what their response is going to be out of the equation, and we have to look at the reason that we started real estate. And having trained a lot of agents in the course of a lot of the last few years, the number one common denominator, that the most reason why people get into real estate is because they've had a previous experience that was not good. And they really felt that, well, I could do it better. So if we go back to remember why we got into real estate in the first place, as we're going in and making these phone calls, it really helps with us to stay in that place of coming from, I want to help them have a good experience. But we get into real estate and we forget all of that. That all goes out the window, because then now we just want to make money. We want to be better than our competition. We end up knowing a little bit too much about the industry, and we end up becoming the exact reason why we started real estate in the first place, because we become like our competition, because we're hungry, we're starving, we're pushing that person to attempt to make a move that they're not ready to make a move, because you want to make a sale, because you want to go to your Tuesday meeting and say you're number one on listing appointments, or I had this many transactions this year and I was number one. I will tell you this, folks, if that is your number one focus, these phone calls are not going to work for you. If you help people achieve what they're looking to achieve, it's going to come easily for you and you will rise to the top. So don't focus on being on the top, focus on being good, focus on being amazing, focus on helping other people. Now that I got that out of the way,
And I
Make
like
it
to tell people too, it's focused more on a customer service role rather than a sales role, because the byproduct of that amazing customer service is going to be the sale.
100%.
But generally speaking, people don't want to be sold to, right? So the more you try to sell them when they're not ready, the further they step away from you.
Do you know what amazes me the most, Crystal? Is when I train agents to conversion and we have a set time that we're supposed to be on the phone for a training and they don't answer the phone. And the agent has scheduled this time to train, to learn how to be better, and they miss the time.
Yeah.
I send them a text message and I get no response. But they can make excuses as to why they forgot about the meeting or why they couldn't attend the meeting, but then they get pissed off at their leads because the leads don't answer their phone. So we really, it all really does start with you, and it comes from self and examination. And you're 100% right. When you go out to eat, that's probably the most thing that we do for customer service, that we experience in our day-to-day lives, is going to the store, going to eat. And when you have really bad customer service, just take notice of that. So when you are working with your customers and you're trying to convert somebody that is a lead, remember that you had really bad customer service and don't be that person. Okay, so I see first 2 calls ever, got an immediate total BS, already bought something. Okay, well, I love the already bought something. And if you know it's total BS, you've already lost it in the first place, right? So you have nothing to lose. So call them on it. So what I would do with that fact is, hey, this is Beverly. I saw that you were looking at homes on 123 Main Street. Oh, I already bought something. Oh my gosh. Well, you were just in yesterday. I just wondered, like, what brought you into the website looking at homes if you just bought one yesterday? Because usually what happens, it's either that they're a new lead. And let's just think about this. Let's just layer this a little bit more. We're all afraid of commitment to some extent. That's just what the world has taught us to do, to be afraid of commitment. So when a person puts a contract on a home, they have buyer's remorse and they want to jump online and they want to make sure there's nothing better out there while they can still get out of the contract, because maybe the contract's been presented and it hasn't been accepted yet. So we will have some leads that come in that it's that last ditch effort of, it's kind of like going on a date. But before you actually make that confirmation of saying, I'm committing to this person, I'm never going to date anybody else again, you just want to make sure that there's nobody else out there that's going to be any better. So ask them, say, oh my gosh, well, you were just in here yesterday. Or, oh my gosh, I saw you were 3 years ago, you were in my website. Well, ask them, say, when did you buy? Where did you buy? What are you doing, Crystal?
Oh, what is going on?
Mercury isn't retrograde, just saying.
I know.
So Rex, just take that a little further and just call them on their bullshit. It's okay, because you lost them anyway. But now, ask them where they bought. Because I will tell you this, the reality is the average buyer stays in a home 5 to 7 years. Ask them how long they plan. Is this your forever home? Is this a transitional home? Do you plan on moving in the future? Because you know what? I will guarantee you in 5, 7, 9 years, they're not going to be using the agent that sold them that house that they just bought. You now have them in your dashboard, and you're going to be in business in 5, 7, 9 years.
And a lot of times those objections too is the fastest way to get you off the phone. I already got it. So if you counter with questions, you can determine if that's a true or false statement that they're making by asking more questions about that purchase.
Oh, I swear there is a law out there that us agents are not aware of, that all the internet leads are aware of. Just say this, right? The agents will hang up the phone if you say just this.
Yeah.
So we have to be a little bit better than that. And that's why I always say I sound like a broken record. When you go into a retail store and the sales clerk says, is there anything I can help you with? We are just as guilty as saying, no, thank you, just looking. Yeah. That's our defense mechanism. It is natural. But it's not natural is our way of overcoming that. Yeah. All right, so we got Rex. They're just blowing me off. I want to get off the phone ASAP with me. So just drop them, I guess. Well, sure. It's one of those things where I like to dig. And in my opinion, it ain't over until the fat lady sings. Unless you give me a really good reason why I should not contact you again, or you kind of, raise your voice and swear at me, I might not contact you again, but rarely does that happen. But it's just digging a little bit further to find out, if you were ever going to move in the future, because you haven't lost anything because you didn't have it in the first place.
That's good. Yeah, because there is a lot of people, and consider yourself right in their shoes when somebody calls you about something, and depending on what you're doing in that moment, you're trying to get them off the phone and get off the phone as fast as you possibly can. Some people are really good at keeping you on the phone, and you end up buying something that you didn't even want in the first place.
Well, but when your phone rings, right, and you're like, oh my God.
You're like, who is this? But that's also the consistency with your calls is bringing up the curiosity as well, just to get them on the phone in the first place.
Yes.
So that's where that kind of falls into play. But yeah, once you've got them on the phone, a lot of time they want to get off the phone, just like you would want to get off the phone. But it's in your best interest to keep them on the phone as long as.
Well, and they really don't even want to answer the phone.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, well, here we had election season here, and everybody's phones were blowing up,
Yeah.
But the robo-dialers, it's not the same today as it was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
People were more acclimated to answer their phone back in the day because you didn't have all the spam on your cell phones. Where now it's your phone rings and you're like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And if you don't know the number, our tactics really have had to change over the course of the years because people have become aware. And it still amazes me today that people will leave their name, phone number, and email address and then be annoyed that you called them. It's like, well, duh. But it's not that they're annoyed at you. We have to taking it personally out of the equation. They're annoyed at the fact that it was not a convenient time to have the conversation that was convenient for you to have. It's a priority for you. The only reason why we take it personally because it's a priority to us, so it should be a priority to them.
Yeah.
So when we kind of get past that, it helps with the conversation, because if we're attached to the outcome of a settlement, our process is going to look a whole lot different than if we're attached to the outcome of genuinely helping someone move into a home that they're investing in their future. It's a completely different process that we're going to be working through, having respect for that person on the other end of the phone. So it's so important on the other end of the phone to be able to read their tonality, to be able to know, match and mirror. And that's why the phone conversations are so much more difficult than face-to-face conversations, because you can read body language. You can't read body language on the phone. So you have to be really sharp in your ear to pick up the tone and be able to go with it. If they're loud, you can be loud. If they're talking quiet as a mouse, you don't want to be up here in the high octave, because they'll be like, whoa. So, I learned very early in the game to eliminate those objections out of the gate. And probably one of the most important things to remember when you're making your phone calls is not to over talk telling them who you are, because honestly, they don't care. All they're thinking right now is, I don't know who this number is, and I don't want to have this conversation, but I'm curious. So when they pick up the phone and say hello, you have seconds to make an impression, to let them decide whether or not they're going to hang up on you or they're going to continue the conversation with you. So if you spend too much time explaining who you are, you're raising your chances of them not wanting to talk to you. But if you quickly go into, hey, this is Beverly, I saw that you were blah. Depending on how the lead was generated, I saw that you were blah. Oh, yeah. Versus, hey, this is Beverly, I'm the best real estate agent in Canada, and you really should be, using my services. When do you want to buy a house? That was a way over exaggeration.
Yeah. But your intro to a conversation can really tell, like, the second you answer a phone and it's a telemarketer. Hi, Mrs. DeVries. This is so-and-so from whatever. We're calling you because it's like, okay, right away, that's giving you that person right then the opportunity to hang up before they even get
I
Explain
had
why
one
that's not.
today that was really good. I thought it was a real person. He was, I would have hired that guy on the spot. And then he finally got to the press one, and I'm like, oh my God, it wasn't a real person. Like, what just happened? I don't even know what just happened.
That's too
Okay,
funny.
so I see Fred had posted objection. Lead
Yeah.
started to look, but is considering purchasing next year. Financially, they will need to wait for their property to sell next year. So I asked if we can help them sell now rather than next year. Lead said market is not that good to sell now. We'll need for the market to pick up. Is there a way that we can bring Fred on?
Yeah, so Fred, I'm going to, let me just find him. So Fred, we're going to allow you to talk wherever you went. Now.
Hopefully he has audio, and hopefully he's in a quiet place.
Yeah,
Hey, Beverly.
there we
How
go.
are you?
Hey, good. How about you?
I am wonderful.
All right. Well, yeah. That lead actually I spoke with was just last week. I think it was like Friday or Thursday. It was really positive when we talked. But I asked if why wouldn't consider selling now? Because it's really my fault that I really didn't dig up. Because they were waiting for their complex to develop or something before selling. So they're really considering selling next year. So I asked some questions I actually forgot, but they will be considering like having rented it out until until they can actually sell it next year. So how can I like basically move up their motivation to get to meet with us and then provide them options?
Sure. Great question. And I love this scenario, because we sometimes forget the most important factor when a seller has a motivation to sell. So from what I'm hearing, this is an investment property. It's not a primary residence. They have it rented out.
No, basically they're living on it.
Okay.
They're considering renting it out if they want to purchase like, now or maybe the next couple of months. Because they
Okay.
won't need to sell the property next year until the building or something is actually, I don't know if it's like, for development or something.
Okay.
So that one I didn't dig up.
So let me ask this, Fred. You may or may not know the answer to this. What is in their absolute best interest for a seller's perspective? What's the most important thing to a seller?
Get the most money into their pocket.
Bingo.
Okay.
So when we're looking and we're trying to expose motivation, Fred, if I could get you, are you looking for a specific dollar amount to walk away with for it to make sense to you?
Yeah, absolutely.
I could get you that dollar amount. Does the timing make a difference to you?
I mean, for me, if we could sell it, on the amount that I'm asking for, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so let me ask you this. How much is your mortgage on that every month?
2,500.
So let's look at holding costs over the course of the next year and what it's going to cost you. Because over the course of 1 year, how much more do you think the market is going to increase?
Okay, that I didn't know.
And the seller's not going to know either.
Right.
Because the reality is their holding costs over the next 12 months may cost them more money than selling today. Because in all reality, Fred, if you know your market, how much can you realistically look at the prices to go up for this time next year?
Right. Right.
So you got to go back to the holding costs and say, okay, how much is this property costing you? And really say, I'm not trying to make you make a purchase. I'm not trying to make you sell this property. What I'm trying to do here is just look at every way possible to make sure, because we don't know what the market's going to look like next year. What if the market tanks? I mean, heck,
Right.
it's happened before. We don't know. What we know is what we know now. And what we know now is how much you're going to be spending every month for the next 12 months.
Gotcha.
So let's just say perspective. All you need to do, Fred, is go back in the last 3, 4, 5 years, look at your market statistics on sales prices and see what percentage your market has increased year over end, and give them that value and say, here's the numbers. You know, you may be okay to wait till next year. Fred, is that going to set you apart from every other agent in your market by having that conversation?
No.
It's going to totally set you apart because no other agent's going to have that conversation with them. Because these people aren't even thinking, they're just, all they're thinking is, this is the sales price today. This is where I think the sales price is going to be next year. I'm going to wait till next year to sell.
Right.
They're not taking into account the time frame and the expense.
Mhm.
How old is the property?
I think it was like 15-year-old.
Okay, that's even way better. 15 years old. Guess what's happening? Water heater's going to break. Appliances are going to start breaking. So not only holding costs on their mortgage, it's going to be costs on what they're going to be putting into the property over the next year.
Okay, got it. Yeah, that's a good one. I didn't realize that one up until now. Okay, that's a good one.
Awesome.
All right.
Go get them. Go get
All
them.
right.
You know, don't be attached to them putting the property on the market,
Mhm.
because what you're going to learn doing that homework and going through that process, they haven't listened to you yet anyway. You haven't lost anything.
Right, right.
But by
Gotcha.
educating them and giving them valid numbers, they're going to have a tremendous amount of respect for you. And that's what our job is as realtors.
Okay, awesome. Thank you
get
so much, Beverly.
You're
All
so
right,
welcome.
all right.
Perfect. So that was great.
Okay,
And I
so
actually have my neighbor tried doing that. They had their house, it was a rental property, and it sat empty because they were trying to sell it, but they wanted way too much for what the current market was suggesting. And it ended up sitting empty for months. So they ended up losing a ton of money because it took, I think, over a year for the property to sell because they were just in their own world as far as what the property was actually worth.
Yep.
And so they were probably out thousands of dollars. They probably walked out in the negative rather than selling it at a suggested price based on neighborhood sale prices. And it kind of goes to show is educate. You know, obviously you can't force someone, and they learn from their mistakes. But again, it's the realtor, as you said, Beverly, so to do that research and pass it along so that your sellers are at least understanding what repercussions may come of not, listening to your suggestions.
one of my favorite lines that I use with every single one of my sellers, and folks, you might want to get a piece of paper out for this one. My job is not to make you sell your house. My job is to give you enough education for you to make a decision based on what makes the most sense for you. I want my customers making educated decisions, because what happens when you present them with all the data, have you ever had a seller that got a contract and then didn't want to sell because they had seller's remorse? Oh yeah, I have. But when you lay it all out on the table and you give them the data to make an educated decision, it changes the game because they see the big perspective. And, shame, did your neighbor, were they for sale by owner, or did they have an agent?
They had an agent, actually a very well-known agent in my area, so I'm surprised that he would even let that happen or list that property.
Well, and some sellers, it doesn't work with everybody, unfortunately. Some sellers just have it in their head that they're so fixated on the number that they're going to sell it for, the pain of every month doesn't even click and register with them. And one of my favorite stories, and where I really started learning this, was I had a seller. I went on a listing appointment. They wanted to put their home on the market. They had two homes. They had their primary in Virginia, and they had another home in Florida that they had already purchased that they were moving to. So they had two mortgages. They weren't by any means like, oh my God, paycheck to paycheck. They could afford both, but they didn't want to afford both. Who wants to afford both if you can be in Florida in the winter, right? So we were in the fall. And when I did my market research, I knew they could not go over 425. No way, no how. With what was on the market, there was no way. And they wanted 475. So I showed them every property that was in 450 to 500 price range. They couldn't compete. Their house was, for lack of a better term, a shitbox. They could not compete. All they had was the land. So when I showed them what was competing, I said, if a buyer is out looking at these properties, why would they buy yours? Do you know what they said? They won't. I said, okay, so let's look at what's between 400 and 450. You can compete, but you're going to be in that 425 because look at what everything's under 425. They're like, oh, I see that. I said, okay, so what's your price? 475. I said, okay, see you later. Bye-bye. There's a bunch of agents that will take your listing. So they didn't want to make their double mortgage payments. They wanted to be in Florida. Mm-hmm. So another agent listed, and I knew at 425, we'd have a contract within 30 days.
Yeah.
Another agent listed their property for 475. 6 months later, wow, they sold for 420. They wasted 6 months of holding on their mortgage.
Doesn't that make you feel like just sending a message? So how does that make you feel?
That work for you. But do you realize the amount of stress I eliminated out of my life because I didn't?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And that other agent, I could not believe she took the listing because she was a great agent in my market. I could not believe she took it. And you know, some agents do take listings because the sellers are going to see it and they're going to drop the price and I'll get the sale. Mm-hmm. That is in no way, shape, or means in my ethics at all. I can't do that to people. I'm not going to be the cause of someone paying 6 months in a mortgage. I'm just not going to do it. I'd rather walk away from the listing.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Mm-hmm. Just going to go back here to Rex, your comment about those people that have already purchased, to take them off the platform. I wouldn't take those people off the platform. What I would say to them is just mention that my system, what it does is you've signed up for daily listing alerts. Now, seeing as you've already purchased, I don't want to be bombarding you or spamming you with these listings. But what I can do is scale it back so that at least you're getting listings once a week or once every other week for the homes that are being listed in your area. So you're able to stay on top of the real estate market that's around you and may affect your current home's value. Is that good?
Well, and taking this a step further too, mm-hmm. You know, I think a couple of times, you know, total BS and calling them out. You know, let's just step back a second and, you know, we have to look at the fact that, Rex, our job as a realtor, we wake up every day unemployed. And we're more marketers than we are realtors because it is our job to expose ourselves to people that don't know that we are open for business, so to speak. So it's not their fault that they landed in your platform as a lead and had already purchased and you hadn't gotten a hold of them. So we can't hold them responsible, or we can't be upset with them because that they've already purchased. What we have to look at from that perspective is okay, I have all these leads in here. They need to know that I am open for business, because one thing I can guarantee you, they're in your platform, they're in your website, they're getting emails, but they don't know you. So our job becomes, we have to let people know who we are, why we're doing business, and how we are our value proposition, right? Why we're set apart from the competition, that they want to do business with us. No different than every night when we're like, what's for dinner, honey? Oh, I don't know. Oh, well, it's too late to go to the grocery store, so let's go out to dinner. There's no difference in how we decide where we're going to dinner. People make decisions on the realtors that are using because you're there at a convenient time for them. No other difference. It's not personal, and it's so freaking hard for us to not take it personally whenever we lose a sale or we feel like we lose a lead. It's numbing. It's very, very disappointing. But you just have to go, okay, next, what was my lesson in that, and how can I prevent that from happening again? Mm-hmm. And that's why I was so persistent on my consistency, because if I was going to lose a lead to someone that had already bought,
Mhm.
I would, if they were in my platform for more than 6 months, I better have had X amount of calls to that person. And I could say to myself, there's nothing else I could have done. If the text messages were there and the emails were there and the consistency of phone calls were there, nothing short of driving up to their house and knocking on their door, which we don't even know where they live. There's nothing more you could have done to have made that sale. Move on, get past it, and next. And just learning from every lead that we lose. And that's how you get better. Just you?
Yes, sorry, that was me, but that should have
Yeah,
gone.
categorize them. We are in information gathering business, folks. And if you have a good phone number and a good email, that lead may be good for somebody someday. And it may even be good for you someday.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Now we do have a loaded question. I came in the Q&A section from Gladys. So there's obviously different points on this. So when they tell you they already have a realtor. So again, it's, and Beverly can go over this, is pulling off the layers, because it could be a realtor that is a family friend, their friend could be a realtor, or a family member is a realtor, or they just happen to know somebody. So obviously how you handle each of those scenarios as to how they know the realtor is going to differ.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the most important thing in that fact is finding out who that other realtor is and how committed they are to that person. Because that's another, Crystal, to your point in the beginning, that's one of those just looking. I have a realtor. It's like that's the internet leads way of just stopping the phone call, because most agents stop. Oh, okay. Well, let me know if anything changes. Yeah. Well, okay. Well, because the reality is, if you go back to how I opened up this webinar to why you got into real estate in the first place, probably because many of you have had bad experiences. And if you didn't have a bad experience, now that you're in real estate, you've seen bad experiences happening from unethical agents. So I had to look at my leads from a perspective of, I have to save them from a bad experience. So I always took those, I have an agent, a little bit further, because again, you've already lost the lead. If they're telling you they have an agent, you've basically already lost the lead. So you have nothing to lose. Have fun with the conversation and come from a place of empathy and just ask the question. Oh, great. I don't want to step on my toes. How do you know your agent? And then that way you'll know, because you're not stepping on toes. Your intention is not to step on toes, but your intention is to find out, do they really? Buyers are liars. So do they really? And the most common response that I get is, I found them on the internet, or I was at open house. That's my cue then to say, that's awesome. Again, I don't want to step on any toes. What has that agent sat down and talked to you about the market, your expectations, and how this whole process looks? 100% every time, no. And that's no joke. 100% every time, no. So now, just like we were talking with Fred, you now have a heads up. You're now above your competition. I hate to use that, because we're never above anybody. We're all one, but I hate to use that. But you're having a better conversation with that person, because you're showing that you care about their process. So when they say I have an agent, oh, that's great. I don't want to step on any toes, but can you tell me, how do you know your agent? So if they say the internet, if they say an open house, great. Has that agent sat down and really explained to you the market details and what this process looks like, and talked to you about your expectations? No. Okay. Well, I do not want to take business away from you, Crystal, but the reality is, do you realize the average agent only sells about 5 to 7 homes a year?
No, I didn't know that.
So I'm not saying that's your agent situation, but what I'm saying is, Crystal, this is a big investment that you're getting ready to move upon. Am I correct?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Do you owe it to yourself to make sure that the person that you're engaging with is going to have your 100% best interest in heart?
Yes, of course.
Do you feel that with the agent that you've been speaking with?
After speaking to you now, I'm not so confident.
And then that's when you go in for, Crystal,
Yeah.
would it make sense for us to sit down and get together and just see if this could be a working relationship? Because I really do care about you and want to make sure this is a great experience for you and your family.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And people don't care how much you know. They want to know how much you care.
Mhm.
And when you come from a place of that empathy and you come up from a place, people pick up on how much you care. But if all you care about is a damn commission, heck yeah.
They know that too.
They absolutely know that too. So we have to get rid of that mindset that we're telemarketers. I don't want to bother people. These people need help in the process. We eat, breathe, and drink real estate. And go back and remember, before you were even signed up for your real estate course, how the freak much you knew about how an agent got paid. Zero. I can promise you, you knew nothing about how real estate agents got paid, and you had no idea sellers' disclosures or buyers' agency agreements. You had no idea of any of that. You just want to see a damn house. So when you start getting into real estate, you're like, oh my God, all these complexities. And we forget these leads don't know.
Yeah.
And that's what our job is to help them not get into a situation with an agent. And I mean, that is a reality, the average agent. So if they give you a little bit of resistance, or if you're afraid to say that, you can just say, so Crystal, what do you do for a living? This is really good. So be real with me, Crystal.
Yeah.
Crystal, what do you do for a living?
I train people on a platform that we use so that they understand how to fully utilize it.
That's cool. So if you only showed up for work 5 to 7 times over the last year, how well would you be able to train?
Not very well, which is questions that I still have that I'd be figuring out while I was training someone.
And that's the real truth.
Yeah.
And, you know, I am not picking on the agents that are only doing 5 to 7 deals a year, because you should have a team to be able to lean on and be able to I don't care if it's your first deal, if you've never done a deal, you can still say that, because that is the truth of the agents. And when you're with a brokerage or you're with a team, that team and that brokerage's experience becomes your experience, because you have them to lean on. So don't be afraid to say that, because it is the absolute truth. And if that lead calls you on it, say, oh my God, well, I feel like I've been, because this was a big fear of mine, right? I don't want anybody calling me on, how long have you been an agent? 1 month? No, I haven't done a deal yet. Say, oh my God, it feels like I've been in real estate forever. Because most of us that got into real estate have bought and sold homes. If we haven't, our parents have. And we've always had an interest in looking at homes online. Take that as experience. Just because you weren't licensed by your state or by your province or however you get licensed there in Canada, just because you weren't licensed doesn't mean you don't have the experience.
Absolutely. Now, what would you say in the circumstance that it's a friend or family member?
Friend or family member, I would just heed with caution and say, I don't want to step on any toes. Just the one thing that I want you to really, be careful of when it's friends and family, because this is my position. I can talk from me, myself, and I've done this with my friends and family. There's no competition, so you don't treat them like you would a paying client. You let them do all the work. And then, so what I would say to them is say, I just want to make sure, friend, how much do you value that friendship if something were to go wrong with the transaction? We can work a referral out. I can work with that agent and ensure that agent does get compensation if that's something that you may be fearful of. Family member, just remember, family, usually, and I can say this from my perspective, I don't work as hard for my family as I do my clients, because I don't have to.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to make sure that you have a really good experience, and that whoever you choose to help you with your biggest investment is somebody that's going to 100% have your back. Because it's true. I don't like doing business with my friends, because I had one friendship that slightly got a little bit weird after I had their home listed and we got a contract on it and the contract backed out. and they can't not take it personally, and it definitely puts a little hitch in the giddy up with friendships.
It's hard. Well, and consider yourself when someone hangs up on you, you don't even know the person, and a lot of people take that personally. So imagine if it's your friend and something goes sideways, or a family member and something goes even just a little bit sideways, it can cause a kink, for sure, or blame or whatever that may be feeling or emotion on either side of that party.
Yeah.
What about, and I've told people as well, is how confident or how comfortable are you with that friend or family member having complete disclosure of your entire current financial situation?
That is
That's another. Yeah. So it's because they will. That's the thing, is like, well, I don't know if I really want so-and-so to have that information, right? Some people are very private about that, and others not as much. So.
And a lot of times you get, that I don't have to pay them. Because a lot of family members will cut their commissions to give it for free. And you honestly can't compete with that. All you can do is say, well, I just want to make sure they're going to work just as hard for you as someone that's getting paid. All you do is plant that little bit of a seed of a doubt in their mind, because then they'll be watching for it. And the moment that something shifts, they're going to be aware. So you may not get the deal, but you've made them aware.
Yeah.
It's kind of that full disclosure, so to speak.
Yeah. Now, does anyone have any questions?
Well, that's usually my lead in. I'm like, Crystal, just real quick, I have to sleep tonight. I just have to make sure, how do you know the agent that you're working with? Because people can, it's like, well, I have to sleep tonight. They're like, well, where's she going with this?
Yeah.
Just being creative with your words.
Yes. And you can only really learn that from practice, really. When you're having those conversations, and trust me, I make videos all day long, and a lot of time I gotta stop, do it again, because something just doesn't come out as I intended. But obviously on a phone call, you can't stop and restart it again, but you learn from it. So the next call you make, you know how to tweak what you're saying when you come across that situation.
And that is the greatest thing that I love about Agent Locator, because it records your phone calls. Go back and listen to them and critique yourself. I didn't get here to where I am with the conversations that I have today by not critiquing my own conversations. I had some really shitty conversations in the very beginning of the game.
We all have, really. It's you find something that works and you're like, yes, that works. So I'm going to use it again. And you really only learn from practice.
So I love Cynthia's question. What's the best time to call people? So I'm going to ask you, Cynthia, what's the best time for you to go to a settlement? Like time of day.
Yeah.
I find more people are home in the eve, but it's also a very hard time to have energy. So it's honestly, it doesn't matter when people are home anymore, because I'm going to ask Crystal this percentage. I'm going to see if we match. How much of a percentage of the phone numbers in Agent Locator across the board do you think are cell phone numbers?
Probably 90% of them.
Bingo. So it don't matter where they are. Everyone holds their phone all day long, every day, unless they are a doctor, a teacher, or other professions likewise that they are not able to have phones. Courthouse, I mean, those are, everybody has their phone. Everybody sees the phone calls coming in. It's the consistency that will win of the number that keeps coming up. Because what happens when a number when the same number repeats on your phone, it shows you, well, I know on my cell phone number, now
it tells you how many times they've tried calling. You see the history
how many times.
Of it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
right beside. So it doesn't matter what time you're calling them. It's the consistency of calling them, and there's no bad time. It's the only thing that I say as far as the best practices for when you're making your phone calls is, if you're calling the same people repetitively day over day over day, don't call them at the same time every day, because people have habits. So, when they put out the whole call center statistics of the best times to make phone calls, it's between 8 and 9 in the morning, it's like 11:30 to 1 and 4:30 to 6:30 or something in that realm. But it all depends on your market. We were calling leads all over the country, including Canada, and rush hours are different in different locations. Just some locations don't even have rush hour. Some people aren't even in their cars for an hour. So there's no bad time to ever call a lead. Just don't call them at the same time all the time. So if you're sitting down at your computer and it's a good time for you every day from 6 to 7 in the evening, if you're calling always from 6 to 7 in the evening and you repeat call anybody and they have a habit between 6 and 7, you're never going to reach them. So it's always changing up the time frames. And the reality is, and that's why I was kind of being a little sarcastic when I asked about what time's a good time for a settlement, because I know your answer would be anytime.
Yeah, anytime.
I'll take a settlement anytime, right?
Work until 1 or 2 in the morning sometimes to get that deal done. So, and you're willing to do that, right? So
yeah,
it's
just being consistent. And I like to say what works for you, but sometimes we have to do things we don't want to do, because it's not about when it's a good time for us. It's when it's a good time for them to answer the phone, and everybody's different because of all the jobs that are out there.
Exactly. Not everyone works a 9 to 5 or 8 to 4. Some work
Do you have a lot of telecommuting
or
in Canada?
mornings or weekends.
Do you have a lot of people that telecommute that work from home?
No.
No, people don't work from home in Canada?
Oh, they do. Yeah, there's companies obviously that do offer that. It's not as common to see, but yes, there are definitely people.
And even Cynthia, if you're sitting down and you're making 10, 15, 20 phone calls, in a day, it really doesn't matter, as far as you're going to get a hold of somebody. I can promise you that.
And one thing that you all can look at is in your lead stat section. Not to go by that time, but you can see what time they registered at. And it's going to be across the board from first thing in the morning to the middle of the night. And just because they registered at 2 in the afternoon one day doesn't mean they're going to be available every day at 2 in the afternoon.
Exactly.
But sure. That at that specific date, that was when they were online looking at listings and registered on your site. So they're all coming in at all different times throughout the day. So keeping that, they're not, if we kind of kept to the whole call them in the evenings because that's when they're available, well, then all your leads would have been coming in after dinner time, if that was the case.
And I'm not an evening caller. I don't like calling in the evening.
I don't talk to people at night. They call me.
When we think about our own energy in the course of the day, we wake up all fired up. We're going to get this done. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And then by the end of the day, you didn't get it done. And you're pissed off. So you don't have as good a conversation in the evenings.
Exactly. If you're able to. So if you set your alerts as well. So I wouldn't get your alerts to be notified every time a lead is active, because depending on the amount of leads you have, your phone's just going to be constantly going off, which you'll start to ignore those notifications. But if you get a notification that your lead has looked at 3 or more listings, if you have an opportunity to call them within the next 5 to 10 minutes, and you connect with them, they're in that mindset of real estate while you're contacting them.
Yep. So just have your ducks in a row on, hey, I saw that you were online looking at da-da-da. What is your current situation? Because all we want to find out is, what is their current situation? Do they own, do they rent? What is the purpose of a potential move? And I always say potential, because we can't assume that they're making a move because they could be looking for a friend.
Yeah.
No live calls today.
There's no live calls today, no there is. If you want to do a role play with Beverly, she can do that with you if you like.
And role plays are so fun because we can get, like, you're not going to get the sale. So you can see. I am not moving to Canada. I can promise you that.
I could be the difficult buyer. The one that'll shut every door on you.
Well, and on the live calls, there's so many recordings. If you go to Beverly Balance BC, and it's Balance Business Consulting, not British Columbia, on my Facebook, and go to my videos, or even go to the videos in the group page, there's so many live dialing sessions. So many. And
we have all our recorded ones as well. We do compilations, just so you know, and I'll pull that up here. I'll post it in the group there. So what we do with these videos every time moving forward for a little while now is we'll cut those videos up. So kind of taking out the calls that instead of, because these webinars are an hour long. So not everyone has an hour to watch the webinar every time. So we kind of take the little snippets of when Beverly actually connected with someone on the phone and how that conversation went. So different scenarios. Here's the YouTube channel. So these are the playlists there that I just posted in the group there. In there, so the live calls, Chris, those are in our Zendesk. So let me just find those for you and I'll send it off to you. Or send it in the group so everyone has it. So we try to compile all of the full ones for you. That goes back all the way to, I think, when Beverly first started with us, actually.
And it's been a while.
Yeah, it has been a while. So there's a lot of videos in there. If you've got hours
in there.
Instead of Netflix, you could be watching Beverly. Want. And then I know I've seen Beverly as well do, the odd, just also she'll pop live on Facebook, doing some dials. Just, I don't know if that's just because you feel like it, Beverly, or
I haven't done it for a while, actually.
I know.
We stopped the dialing piece of our business, and we're just strictly training now.
Oh, okay.
Well, and that was the intent of when I started the company. It was just all going to be training, and it just led into just call for me. Well,
Yes.
It ended up being where I always wanted to teach people how to fish, not fish for them.
Mm-hmm.
And rightfully so, agents need to take responsibility for their own dashboard, and they either need to do it or they need to learn how to do it, and then they need to hire to do it. But internally, because agents, we have this really bad, I don't know what word I'm looking for. We have a really, really hard time delegating because we want to do everything ourselves.
Right.
It's so funny. It's like they would hire us to make the phone calls, and they'd be like, but you didn't do this. I'm like, but you won't even pick up the phone and make the phone call. Like, I can get you the person in front of you. I can get you the person that wants to talk to you, but if you can't get a hold of them because you're not trying, that's a whole different game. You can't be afraid of the phone, and you can't be afraid of people, and it all comes down to confidence.
Oh, absolutely. And you can only gain that through practice. Trust me.
Mm-hmm.
When I first started real estate, I was with commercial. So I started on the commercial side of things rather than the residential.
Oh.
And I had like the two that I have are mentors. They actually teach at U of T, or one passed away, but the other one now he still teaches on investing. He's got books going and all this stuff. So I was kind of thrown, and the older gentleman that has now passed away basically gave me a list and said, call all these people and see if they're willing to sell. I had never picked up a phone in my life and done any kind of cold calling. So it was like nerve-wracking. I was sitting there staring at the phone while he's like 4 feet away from me. So I've got to do this. I can't not do it. But it was really just calling these people and practicing perfection. So I learned exactly what to say to get the response I needed.
I learned what not to say first.
Well, exactly. I was like, well, that didn't work. Okay. So then I would just be like, well, if the price is right, would you consider selling your home or selling your property? It was because he wanted to do land development. He's like, well, yeah, absolutely. If the price was right, I'd be willing to sell. I'm like, great. So then I'd go into leading into the appointment for him to go into that. So, some people weren't willing to move, obviously. And some were, well, obviously, if they can get what they want for it, then they're willing to do anything. So it's kind of like a fake it till you make it, but you learn from your mistakes.
Yeah.
What
the thing is about our mindsets, Crystal, is, it's resonating with me while you're saying this. We tend to look at the losses as we never get a win, because when we get the win, we think of how many losses we had to go through to get the win. And then we don't even enjoy the win because we're so focused on how many people said no.
Yeah.
So how many phone calls would you have to actually make to get that appointment?
Oh, I don't even know. It depends on who is answering too, right? Because I would have to go to the do not call list, phone them that way. So this is a while ago now. So if I got them on the phone, I would say it was definitely on a more positive side that people were willing to, discuss the opportunity. But then it went from there for me contacting major corporations about retail space, and that was even more nerve wracking because these people knew everything. They knew their numbers. They had this lingo that I wasn't yet familiar with, and it was literally, I would say it's fake it till you make it. I'd be on that call sweating because they're saying things to me that I don't understand, but just winging it and having that conversation with them and then hanging up the phone. And it's just like, yeah, after that call, like that was intense. But it went through, and then you end up building relationships with these people. So when the time comes and they have more retail space available, that job of reaching out to that person is just so much more simplified, because I've now got that connection with them and had conversations and things like that. So
And you didn't die.
and I didn't die in the process. No, and so it was like, so for a lot of you, I know that's the struggle is just picking up the phone in the first place, and you get anxiety of, I don't want to do this, make excuses why you're not going to do it. But the reward of learning how to do it is going to benefit you for your entire career. So just do it. That's the thing. Just like as we've said before, just start with one call. One call, challenge yourself, and then 2 calls, 3 calls, or call until you get 3 no's or 2 no's. Or 2 people hanging up on you, or 1 person hanging up on you, and then you're done for the day. And then just keep going.
And that's the biggest piece.
Yeah.
One of my clients that I was training, he's like, how many hours do I need to spend on my dashboard? And we've been so conditioned by so many different coaches, 2 hours a day, 2 hours a day. It's grueling to me to do 2 hours a day. If I can take those 2 hours because my systems are so good, if I can take those 2 hours and condense them down and we all know that when we're leaving for vacation, we get way more done quicker than if we weren't leaving for vacation.
Oh yeah.
If we treat our dashboard like that every single day and we're calling the right people, we don't have to spend 2 freaking hours in our dashboard. Just be consistent and call the important ones, call the high priority ones you have a chance of converting if they answer the phone. And call it a day. So, after the very first training, I said, so all I want you to do over the course of the next week until our next conversation is I want you to just do 1 call today, 2 calls tomorrow, 3 calls the next day. Acclimate yourself to it. If nobody answers, it's okay. Just get into the habit of picking up that phone. And you're going to have a conversation here and there along the way. And I said, so how excited were you that you didn't get on this coaching call and realize you had to spend 2 hours a day and I didn't tell you that? And they're like, oh my God, that's it? I'm like, yeah, because it's better than what you were doing.
Not doing anything. And you can mix it up too. So if you, and some teams will do it. I know I was on a team previously where they had 2 hours every day that they either had to be working on converting leads, or business, like some sort of building. So when you think of like growing your business, because it's not just the deals you're working on today, it's the ones that you're going to be working on tomorrow and next month and months to follow. So things like door knocking or, advertising or posting on social media, anything that's going to help grow your business. If you're going to try to stick to I'm going to stick 2 hours a day to grow my business, it doesn't all have to be on the phone.
Yep.
Anything that's going to.
And it's always looking at it from the tier, right? The main objective is to be sitting at the settlement table.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at the number 1 objective of sitting at the settlement table, if you're not at the settlement table, you should be with a client, whether it be a listing presentation or an active buyer showing homes. If you're not with a client, you should be working on getting that client. If you're not working on getting that client, you should work on the marketing that's going to generate getting those clients. So it's a 4-layer process of, if you're not doing this, then this. If you're not doing this, then this. And that's what you spend your time on to be better today than you were yesterday.
Build that flow. I know a realtor that door knock. He does pop-bys. He doesn't do, his team does lead gen with us. He doesn't because he's computer illiterate, he claims. But he's a top producing team in my area, and he does pop-bys every single week for all his past clients. So if he's in the area, he'll just stop in and just say, hey, So instead of doing like a newsletter or something like that, I think he hits like 20 or 25 homes or clients every week where he'll just stop in and knock on the door and say, hey, how are you doing? And he
You know,
has so much repeat business because of that personal touch. It's not just like a phone call or a newsletter that they send in an email or send to their address. He's actually physically showing up at the door.
I don't know if Tim is still on. I just realized he put a question in the Q&A and not in the chat, and we missed it.
Okay.
And he
Yeah.
posted it like 2:55. He was the
Okay.
early bird, and we totally didn't even answer it. It's actually a really good question. I know we're a little bit over,
Mhm.
but
Yeah.
it's definitely warrants a minute. Do you ever find it off-putting to people that they know that you can see what they're looking at? Basically, I mean, he said a little bit more than that, but he said that I always worry about telling them I know they have looked at property 3 times, for example. So Tim, it's one of those things where we don't need to expose what we see on our end. All we know is that they were looking at property. They don't need to know that we know they looked at that one particular property. So it's just going into that, entering that dialogue of, hey, I saw that you were looking at some homes in this location. And,
Mhm.
you know, you can ask them, is there anything in particular about that location that's drawing you there? Are there any homes that you've seen that you like in that area? So if it's uncomfortable for you, that's okay. You don't have to expose the fact that they knew, or that you knew that what they were looking at. Because you know, some people get like kind of that creeper, like, well, how do you know that? I mean, some people are like that just with, how did you get my phone number? You put it on the website.
Very true. And the sites have cookies nowadays. So you say, you know that thing where you said okay about the site having cookies? This is exactly why the site has cookies. It allows for the people on the other end of the website to see what you're doing on the website and educate them a little bit. So it's kind of a neat trick because it allows me to actually reach out to you if I notice that you might have an interest in something, because I know you're busy and it's my job to actually take care of you.
And
Things
it's so
like that.
funny, Crystal, because I've had people say, oh my God, you're like the 100th phone call I've got. And I say, how many websites did you put your name and phone number on? A lot. Well, maybe stop doing that. Maybe stop doing that, because now, you know what? Now I'm not going to call you anymore, but I can't guarantee that somebody else isn't going to call you anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yep. They're out there. That's for sure. They go click happy. You register happy.
I'll see you in 2 weeks.
2 weeks. Yeah, absolutely. So thanks everyone for joining. And if you need any help with respect to, you know, their objections that you're having, just email them through. You can email to support at agentlocator.ca. You can email to myself, Crystal at agentlocator.ca. And we'll get those answered for you, or find you a clip that we've already compiled that answers that objection or situation that you may be encountering with your leads or your dashboard. Awesome. Well, thanks everyone, and thanks Beverly.
You're welcome.
We'll see you in a couple weeks. All right. Bye.